I don't know about you, but from time to time I see some really odd stories in the newspapers. And one that I can remember very clearly happened in August 2020, and it appeared in all the national newspapers in the UK. And like many of these stories, it appeared to be written by the same person because the wording and phrasings were all very, very similar across these newspaper titles. So what was it about then? Well, the essence of it was that Boris Johnson had passed some new law, and the law was going to grant local councils the power to bulldoze homes contaminated with the deadly Divot virus. And it also gave, the same law also gave councils the power to crush contaminated cars. Now, at the time, I just thought that this was baffling because it just seemed so extreme. I remembered back to Salisbury and that Skripal case, and back then they were telling us about the deadly nerve agent. What do they call it? The military grade Novichok. And the official government advice from that was that if you found something in the Salisbury area, you didn't need to worry about the military grade Novichok. You could just wipe it down with some wet wipes. So I just thought to myself, this is a little bit excessive, like bulldozering a whole house because somebody's had Divock inside it. Couldn't you just spray it or wipe it down or something? And why trash a perfectly good car? That is, unless you wanted to get rid of all petrol and diesel cars for other reasons. So at the time, this was a huge red light for me. I thought, well, there's something up here. This is more than what this newspaper article is telling me. There's another agenda here. I also remember talking to this person called Claire that I used to work with. I told her about it, and she looked back at me again with the "you're a conspiracy theorist" eyes. I said to her, "Look, I'm not. I'll send you some links." Anyway, I did send the links, and she didn't reply to my emails. But nevertheless, I was amazed that more people didn't question this new law. It sounded mad, bulldozering houses contaminated because somebody's had Divock inside it. It's just, I'll show you the articles now so you know that I'm not making it up. So a couple of nights ago, I had a dream. I think it's early in the morning, and I know this sounds a bit bizarre, and it is a bit bizarre, but I kind of my dream was about this scenario, and I think I've got an answer to what's going on, or a possible answer at any rate. So the first thing to understand, I think, is that the World Economic Forum, Prince Charles, Davos types, David Attenborough, they're obsessed with Mother Earth and Gaia, and these guys worship the creation rather than worshipping the creator. Yeah, this is a delusion that they're suffering from, and they view human beings as being some sort of locust on the planet, some plague on the planet. And we are the carbon that they want to reduce. This has been made very, very clear to us, as I say, by the likes of Boris Johnson. When told about a lack of biodiversity and animals were going to become extinct, his answer was, can't we feed some of the humans to the animals? And I wish I was joking about that, but I'm not. So if they believe that they should be worshipping the earth and trying to rid the earth of humanity, then they would need a strategy to do that. And they call this rewilding, and the idea of it is to remove humans from large areas of the planet and move them into resettling zones. So you take people, I don't know, maybe from the southwest of England, you knock all the houses down and you return that area to natural wildlife and nature, and you move the people into maybe high density housing inside a smart city. That's the idea of this thing. Again, I'm going to show you some clips from the UN and newspapers, and just to prove that I'm not making any of this stuff up about rewilding. And you know, the other thing to say as well, it's not just like, you know, suburbia or maybe cities that they want to get rid of, certain cities. It's also farmland as well. They want to return that into a completely natural state. So the big question is how they're going to kick humans off the land in order to rewild it. Well, I guess what one thing that we kind of all know at the moment is the Britney Spears and the boosters and the excess deaths. So you can just basically kill off some of the humans that, and then they won't be living on the land because they'll be brown bread. But I think there is other solutions that they have as well, and the rest of the video is going to be about that. So if you cast your mind back to the Chernobyl explosion, one of the things that the communists did was that they immediately established an exclusion zone around the Chernobyl power station in Belarus and Ukraine. It happened in both countries. People were moved against their will. There was forced migration out of this area that had been designated a human exclusion zone. You know, again, I can post up links to that for people that don't know that. And what was interesting was that at the time, people obeyed that call to go and leave their homes out of free will, because they were genuinely fearful about what happened. So it kind of worked. And if you go back to those places today, you can see that nature has returned to cities like Pripyat. You know, so there's trees growing out of apartment blocks crumbling, and gradually the whole place is going back to a natural state. It's almost as if human beings had never lived there. So no doubt people like Prince Charles and Attenborough would be overjoyed at that, you know, because the deer have got the forests back. Many of you'll know a YouTuber called Bald and Bankrupt. I think he's absolutely superb, and I also think, as an aside, he's one of these people that's been smeared by the establishment. There's all sorts of false, what I believe to be false rumours that have been spread about him. You know, if you just watch his videos, he seems to be a perfectly reasonable guy. In fact, a lot better than that. A lot to admire about the bloke and the way that he interacts with people. Anyway, there's a series of videos that he's done where he's gone into this exclusion zone on both sides of the border, sometimes in Ukraine, other times in Belarus. And he's visited all sorts of people that have snuck back into the exclusion zone. A lot of them, you know, are now quite elderly people, and they've lived there for years. You know, they snuck back in, rehabited their own houses, grew fruit and vegetables, did a bit of hunting, mushroom picking or whatever. And it's all described really well in some of his videos. Now, what I'm perplexed by is, given that we were told that there was deadly radiation in this area around the Chernobyl power plant, like quite a big area, how come these babushkas haven't died as a result of eating the vegetables that they've been growing in the contaminated soil of the Chernobyl region? How come they haven't died from eating infected deer meat or whatever it is, elk meat or whatever else that they eat there, and the mushrooms and everything? It's not many shops there, you see, so people are practically living off grid, and there's quite a few people who are doing it. So why aren't they dead, in simple terms, is my question to you, given that we're told that this radiation leak was deadly and the half-life was, I don't know, 10 million years into the future, and it was going to be, you know, etc, etc, etc. So what I want to advance to you is the hypothesis that this stunt, this Chernobyl event, might have just been a trial run, and is there a possibility that something similar might be replayed in the future, possibly on a much larger scale? Another dot in this dot-to-dot picture that I think, well, kind of came into my mind anyway, is public enemy number one, Vladimir Putin, the Emmanuel Goldstein of the 21st century. So the newspapers have been talking up the possibility that he's a madman and he's going to launch a nuclear attack against the West. Again, I'll put some newspaper. Now, personally, I don't think that that they'll. Yeah, they could nuke a place like Manchester or Liverpool, somewhere that is of no interest to the globalists whatsoever. Sorry, Geordies, but that could be Newcastle as well. Yeah, they could do that. They could try to rewild the northwest of England. They might also drop or say that they've dropped something in some farmland in Poland, or maybe nuke some forest in eastern Finland somewhere. I don't rule that out, them either doing it or saying, or more likely saying that they've done it. Another thing that I've been thinking about these days, and I don't know about you, but my way of thinking at the moment is that I don't tend to rule things out anymore, even the kind of wildest of things. Well, I might not agree with it straight off, but I don't tend to rule things out as readily as I did before on the say-so of the mainstream media. So, yeah, what am I talking about? Well, quite simply, do they actually possess this nuclear weapon technology? Why do I say that? Well, if you look at the actual pictures of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, there's still some buildings standing up, isn't there? That didn't wipe out the whole place. And not everybody died in those places. And then also, something that's more significant, I think, is that these cities were all rebuilt. Rebuilt on contaminated land. How come the people that lived in the rebuilt cities didn't die of radiation poisoning? Bearing in mind the long half-lives, blah 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 blah, of the radioactive material used in the so-called bomb. Another thing that they've been going with on the predictive programming route, they've been doing this now for over 10 years, is the dirty bomb, in a suitcase. So it's like a conventional bomb, and then somebody's put nuclear material in it, so when the bomb goes off, it doesn't cause much physical damage, but then it spreads all radiation all over the place. And that could be, they could stage one of those events, or maybe more likely a false flag type event, and then say to people, oh, you've got to move out of this area that you're currently living in because it's being contaminated by a dirty suitcase bomb or something. Again, this might sound far-fetched, but I don't know, is it? Could they try something like that? Maybe they could. The other thing that I want to point out at this point is something that I've mentioned before, but it's worthy of repetition, is that personally I don't buy into this Putin versus NATO dichotomy. They want us to think that there's a game of chess, Putin, the ultimate chess player, against Biden. See that old joke? Maybe not Biden, but I don't know who the metaphor opponent would be. But anyway, this is what they try to think, is that the Russia is engaged in a game of chess, a strategic battle against the West. I think the reality of the situation is that the puppet politicians are controlled by the same entity. So when you see that the chessboard There might be two players and a white set of pieces and a black set of pieces, but the reality of the situation is that the game is rigged, it's orchestrated. There's one player moving both sets of pieces. So why is that significant? Well, it may well be that Putin goes along with one of these narratives. Maybe they actually do nuke a little bit of forest in Finland, or set off a dirty suitcase bomb in Manchester. Maybe they actually do that. But what I would say is that that's probably not, it's not a genuine war. It's more of a orchestrated, all the world's a stage type thing, where it's, well, you can see this now, what's going on in Ukraine. Ukraine is allegedly a war here, but basically I believe that, well, it's obvious, isn't it? The outcome of the war just so happens to be pushing the Great Reset, which is a mighty coincidence, isn't it? One last dot to connect is the influx of fighting age men who are being put up at the taxpayers' expense in 4-star hotels in Britain. So what's this all about, and how is it connected? Well, if you did set off a suitcase bomb or whatever it was, or say that there was, you know, some sort of nuclear contamination of an area, it may not, people don't trust the government anymore. So it's not a given, like it was in Ukraine, that people would believe the government and leave the so-called contaminated area and happily watch their homes being bulldozed by the state. So force might be required. So you would actually need a group of people, maybe dressed up in blue UN clothing with some guns, to deal with the people that didn't want to be evacuated from the contaminated area. So that might explain why there's so many people being fighting age men appearing in British hotels. Maybe they are just waiting there, ready to be deployed. So that's all I want to say about that. You can hear an engine behind. It's basically a tractor. We've had a massive snowfall again, so I'm going to have to go out and clear the snow off our drive. He's clearing the road. So tell me what you think in the comments about whether what I've said is too far-fetched, or do you think it's a realistic possibility? Could they try to pull off something as audacious as this? So yeah, with that, that's all I want to say, and God bless you all.